Coming to you live from the DraftKings studios in Boston, Massachusetts. This is The Sweat, available to billions of people around the world. I can confirm not all of them are watching, but a man can dream, though. A man can dream.
Is this because you found out how many people there are on Earth today? That's
I did Google that. That's why we had
he was freaking out earlier.
I can't believe there's like 7.6 billion people in the world.
I know, Emerson. He's Emerson. I'm Jessie, and y'all know what day it is. Waiver Wire Tuesday, which is why we have DK Live's Reed Fowler, Alex Rickleen, and that Action Network's Ian Hartitz here with us. Guys, another bad weekend of injuries for running backs. Jay Ajayi is out for the season with a torn ACL, and Matt Breida will likely miss a few weeks with that ankle injury. Reed, who could be available to add in season-long leagues? With Ajayi out, are you interested in looking to that Eagles backfield?
I think, yeah, initially, if you need someone to fill in, and Ajayi was your RB1, hopefully not, or RB2, you could feasibly put in Clement or Smallwood. Alf Morris, too, right out of San Francisco, with Matt Breida going down for a couple of weeks with that high ankle sprain. So those guys are plug and plays. If you don't need immediate help, I think there are a couple guys out there just in terms of what you can do as an ad for the future. Donta Foreman, who's 20% owned out of Houston in that backfield. Lamar Miller hasn't done anything. He was brought in to essentially have a workhorse type role, and he just hasn't done anything. He's not able to stay healthy. And look what happened to Deshaun Watson when they don't establish a run game. This guy gets absolutely beat up. He's actually averaging 6 attempts. So when you look at a guy like Donta Foreman, who's probably available in your league because of him not being able to play for the last feasible year, a lot of people probably might not be on him or remember how efficient he was when he was playing. Didn't get a lot of attempts, but in terms of that last game before he was out, he did get a couple of touchdowns on about 10 to 15 carries. So this guy is a bruiser. He's quick. And he is someone that the Texans do want to play. So week 7 is supposed to be when he comes back. He could be a speculative ad for you if you can wait. If not, then those guys, those backups, you can easily put in there.
Alex, what do you think? Who are you looking to pick up at running back?
There's a ton of upside in the Philadelphia backs if anyone takes the main role. But there are a number of other guys who still have my attention. So Austin Eckler is still available in more than 40% of leagues. And he has more yards at this point than Kamara had at this point last season. So you got to pick that up. I'm very interested in Nick Chubb long-term now that the Cleveland offense looks like it might do something useful this season. The Donta Foreman or Alfred Blue for the Texans is I'm a little bit more interested in than in the Eagles. And Spencer Ware, there's some trade rumors going around just at this point. But if Ware gets traded to the Eagles, I would be far more interested in him than anyone else currently on the Eagles roster.
Ian, what do you think? Tons of injuries, running backs who aren't going to be doing a lot of running, you know. So who are you looking to maybe pick up?
I'm looking at Buck Allen. I feel like I talked about him a week or two ago. And look, this is still the Ravens' #1 running back. I think, I came into the season thinking Alex Collins was going to be the guy. Had a great second half to last year. But here we are in week 6. And Allen has played more snaps. He has more targets. He has more carries inside the 5-yard line. Collins is getting more of these kind of, meandering rush attempts in between the 20s. But those aren't really the fantasy-friendly, touches we're looking for out of our running back. So if Buck Allen's on the, on your waiver wire, this Ravens offense has proven for the last 10 weeks or so that they are a high-scoring offense. And Buck Allen has more or less become game flow independent thanks to this fantasy-friendly receiving and goal line. So I'm all in on Buck Allen really almost any week, but I think especially if you got some of these guys hurt or on a bye, fire them up.
Well, speaking of the bye week, that bug is biting owners of the Saints and Lions players now, and that's a lot of wide receiver talent here, dude. So who do you look at to help fill the void here, Ian?
Yeah, I'm looking at Dante Moncrief in Jacksonville. I know between him, Cole, and Westbrook, it's kind of a fluid situation from week to week. But at the same time, Moncrief leads the team in targets. He leads the team in air yards. Leads the team in targets inside the 10-yard line. I think all these things could get a nice little boost with Austin Seferian-Jenkins now on IR with a core injury. So I think Moncrief is really now the team's undisputed red zone option. Even if the targets continue to be spread out a little bit on a week-to-week basis, I think Moncrief is the guy with the most touchdown upside.
Where are you going on this, Reed?
I'm actually going Mohamed Sanu. I talked about him on Thursday's show in terms of someone you could pick up and plug in terms of value. But long term, this guy's 33% owned. We've seen Sanu work really well in this offense. And on top of that, when you have high-scoring games or high implied game totals, Sanu's production is out of this world. He's outproduced the last 3 games by quite a bit, probably 2 or 3x in terms of his projection to his actual points scored. What's really good about Sanu or just anyone in Atlanta is they don't have a defense. They don't have a defense that can stop anyone. So when you have these high-scoring games, a lot of plays being run, this guy is seeing 8 targets per game of the last 3 games, and he's available in almost 67% of leagues. So if you need someone, again, to fill in this bye week, I think Sanu is a solid option. We know that Matt Ryan loves to go to Sanu in the red zone. We've seen Calvin Ridley kind of go back down to earth with last game. But again, if you look at someone who can produce in these bye weeks, Sanu is always a popular ad for me, so he'd be my guy.
Yeah, Reed, think about it. In week 6, the Falcons get the Buccaneers at home. They just allowed 6 passing touchdowns to Mitch Trubisky. Alex, where are you going to go? Who are you eyeing on the waiver wire? Help the people at home, please. They're begging you.
Anyone who is looking for a 1-week fill-in needs to begin their search by looking at who the Falcons or the Buccaneers are playing all season long. And this week, the Falcons' defense is going up against Chris Godwin, who we've already seen him do a lot of impressive things. He's a talented young player with a great future ahead of him. So if you're really only looking for 1 week, you got to start with Chris Godwin. Geronimo Allison, absurdly, is under 50% owned, though. So especially if you have an IR spot, I'd add Geronimo Allison first, put him in your IR, and then I'd pick up Chris Godwin to play this week. Geronimo Allison seems to be the number 2 option in Green Bay.
Guys, not many tight ends doing a whole lot this year. So, Alex, any potential free agents or streamers you're eyeing this weekend?
Well, so I'm typically the Debbie Downer at the Austin Hooper party, but he's going against the Buccaneers, and as I just said, anyone going against the Buccaneers or the Falcons, that's where you got to start your search. So I like Austin Hooper, at least for this week, even though I'm often against him. Last year, Jameis Winston preferred Cameron Brate to O.J. Howard by a sort of tangible margin. Most of O.J. Howard's production came in the couple of weeks that Ryan Fitzpatrick filled in. So with Jameis Winston back, Cameron Brate strikes me as a long-term pickup. Will be especially good this week with OJ not even in the picture because he's probably going to be out.
Ian, who are you eyeing for this one at tight end?
Yeah, I like the Cam Brate call with O.J. Howard out this week. I'm not so sure Brate's going to keep up his Winston splits once Howard comes back, but you don't need to worry about that this week. This week, all we got is basically the Buccaneers middle of the field underneath threat going up against this Falcons defense that, I mean, good Lord, we tried to attack them with receiving running backs every week this year. Ronald Jones and Peyton Barber aren't really those types of players where, we expected Giovanni Bernard or Alvin Kamara type receiving role. So I think Cam Brate is really our best option here to attack this defense that, is without Deion Jones, as without their starting safety. So I'm all in on Cam Brate this week. I don't know if he'll, be super relevant the rest of the way, but by all means, go get him this week.
Yeah, Reed, not a lot of good, reliable tight ends this week to choose from. Are you agreeing with the guys on this one?
Yeah, both of the guys, Cam Brate, Austin Hooper, will probably be. Cam Brate should have been picked up last week with us knowing that Winston was going to get that starting role come this week. But if those guys aren't, look, Greg Olsen, just make sure, right? He was probably picked up, so you just want to make sure that he's still not on the waiver wire in terms of, and if you have that IR spot, easily you could have put him in a couple weeks ago with his rehab going pretty smoothly. So if he's there, obviously pick him up. But if not, if you're going deeper and these guys aren't, Jeff Swain is someone in Dallas that has been the leading receiver 2 of the last 3 weeks. And he's not putting up huge numbers by any stretch, but being a lead receiver on a team, if you're a tight end, is what you need, right? You need those 40 or 50 yards, and that's what he's been getting you. He's got about 5 or 6 targets in these last 2 to 3 games. And if you need someone, he's 93% available. So he's probably 5 to 6 to 7% owned in most leagues. I would see if he's out there to plug and play. This week, though, coming up against Jacksonville is a tough one. He'd be more of a speculative ad if those other guys aren't already taken up.
Yeah, you mentioned Olsen coming back from that fractured foot. He's still 40% available in a lot of those leagues. So,
interesting.
Could be coming back.
Well, if streaming defenses is the name of the game here, guys, which it is for a lot of people week in and week out, who should we be scooping up in week 6? Go ahead, Mr. Fowler.
Oh, thank you. Anyone playing against San Francisco, so Green Bay is someone that I'm looking at in terms of a streaming defense. Dallas actually presents a very interesting defense as well. Obviously, with Sean Lee going out, that defense does hurt quite a bit. But Jalen Smith looked like he's capable of fulfilling that role for the time being. And if you're going up against Bortles, we saw Bortles be Bortles, right? We saw him throw 4 or 5 interceptions, and him really going back to being the Blake Bortles that we know. So Dallas presents, if Green Bay is not out there, I think Dallas presents an interesting streaming defense just because they can still get a lot of points put up against them, but opportunistic defenses, good defensive line. Jacksonville has a good offensive line, so you might not get that sack production, but turnovers could be there. So that'd be my 2 defenses.
Yep, the Jaguars and Blake Bortles made the Chiefs look like they were not the last place defense in the league, in which they actually were at the time.
But he did throw 4 interceptions and still managed to get over 21 fantasy points. So.
Good for you, Blake Bortles. The boat. Yeah. Ian, what would you do in this situation? Who would you stream at defense?
I'm on the same page with Reed here. I think he made a good point about Jalen Smith. And another, big move in Dallas was them drafting Leighton Vander Esch in the first round. I mean, they identified, their defense without Sean Lee was pretty much their kryptonite. And it's nice how they've been able to stand up with him out this year, even though the offense can't get anything going. I'd probably still go the Packers, though, first, if you can get them. I mean, this 49ers offense, I think as long as Kyle Shanahan's calling plays, they're going to score, 16-plus points a game. But C.J. Beathard, we've seen 4 picks the last 2 weeks, 5 sacks. I mean, mistakes are going to be made. And this is an improved Packers pass defense. I mean, that's what happens when you're spending most of your top draft picks on cornerbacks. So a little more talent out there than I think we're used to seeing at home. Banged up 49ers offense. Give me the Packers.
Alex, which defense tickles your fancy?
A ton to add to what they just said. Green Bay going against C.J. Beathard, you got to look at that. Seattle, I think that they've almost become an underrated defense because they're definitely not what they were a couple of years ago, but they're all right. And I don't really trust Oakland these days. I don't trust their offense. So Seattle is someone I'm looking at, but they both already mentioned them. So I'll throw out the Bills and the Raiders as some real dart throws that you can't have any confidence in. But if you're in a hyper competitive league, if those other if those other picks aren't available, Bills and Raiders are at least worth a glance.
All right, guys, we're going to play some NFL spin move with you coming up, so please hang tight. Plus, we're going to gather some NHL Showdown picks.
Let's go.
Following a quick fantasy flash.
Tyler Sullivan here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. The Red Sox will have a chance to advance the ALCS on Tuesday when they square up against the Yankees in New York for Game 4 of the ALDS. To try and avoid elimination, New York will trot out CC Sabathia to the mound, who cost $13,300 for this showdown contest. In his postseason career with this team facing elimination, Sabathia is 2-2 with a 3.76 ERA. And on the other side, the Sox will put the ball in Rick Porcello's hands, who prices in as the most expensive player in this showdown slate at $14,000. The former Cy Young Award winner has some success against the Yankees this season as he one-hit them back in August and then threw 7 scoreless against them in April. But that said, both of those starts were at Fenway Park, so he does face a more difficult challenge of pitching in New York. As for some bats to keep an eye on, Mookie Betts at $11,000 is a logical play when you look at his history against Sabathia. The Sox outfielder is hitting .429 against Sabathia in his career to go along with 3 RBIs. And for the Yankees, Brett Gardner is a pretty decent value play at $6,300 against Porcello in his career. Gardner is hitting .286 to go along with 2 home runs and 5 doubles.
It's Sticky Puck season, and we're here for all of it. And so are these guys, Sean Newsham and Joe Holka, this dynamic duo hailing from the Action Network. Grab the app right now on Android and iPhone.
Gentlemen, please help the people at home draft the absolute perfect team for our 2 showdown contests tonight. One of them featuring the Sharks and the Flyers, the other pairing up the Leafs and Stars. Which one do you like targeting more and why, Joseph?
Yeah, I like the Leafs and Stars. Like the NHL is just looking more and more like the college game every day. And I think the Leafs and Stars are a great example of that. Both teams play with a ton of speed and pace. Jim Montgomery out of Denver University, just such a fantastic fit for this Dallas Stars team. Definitely expecting a lot from them this season. And I think it's going to be a really nice game to watch.
Sean, what are the chances you're going with the Sharks and Flyers here, bud?
Unfortunately, not great. I really like the Toronto game as well. Both teams play such a high-tempo game. So if you're giving me an option between 2 games, I want the game that's going to be up and down with fast tempo and not much defense being played. And Toronto currently is going with the lack of defense approach for the season. I think they're going to contain that for the whole season. So I really like the Toronto game best of the two.
All right, guys, so tell us which player you like the most in either matchup, Sean.
So for me, I'm going to stick with that same game I just talked about, and my favorite player is Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner's at $9K. He's below the price of the other high-priced guys like John Tavares and Austin Matthews, but he gives you a similar production from what these guys are going to get. He's a proven goal scorer. I think this is going to be his breakout year where maybe he puts up 35 or 40 goals. So I'm going to stick by that, and I think that Mitch Marner is my favorite play on Toronto tonight.
Joe, who are you looking at, who you're going to build around, your lineup? Who do you think is going to be the most value?
Yeah, I love the Marner call, but I'm going to go with Tyler Seguin. I just think he's the guy that's worth paying up for. 98th percentile in shot attempts over the past year. 5.3 shot attempts per game over that span. It's just an insane floor for this guy and one of the best possible matchups for pace and expected goals like we talked about before.
All right, from top to bottom, as for who you like the least, the guy you're not touching, hit me with it, Joe.
Yeah, Logan Couture in that other game. I just think he's overpriced given that he's only at 2.65 shots per game over the past year. 87th percentile is just fine. I just want a lot more from a guy at his price point. I think there's better point per dollar plays even on this first power play unit outside of him, and definitely guys that are a lot safer overall.
Yeah, only 4 fantasy points his last time out. What about you, Sean? Who do you like the least in this one?
For me, it's got to be Tyler Ennis. Ennis happens to be one of my favorite players, too. I actually have about 3 NHL jerseys. His is one of them as a Sabres fan. But he just hasn't produced, and they've bumped him down to the 4th line. So you see he's only playing about 8 or 9 minutes a game, and that total is going to shrink even more. So with the lack of playing time, the lack of opportunity at 6,600, he just doesn't provide a great situation for you to look at.
Fan people, because we're all about saving cash on this program. Sean, who's a value pick that people can reach down for?
Just on the flip side of what I talked about with Tyler Ennis, Kasperi Kapanen has increased his workload. He jumped up onto the Austin Matthews line in replace of Ennis. In the last game, he ended up having a goal, an assist, and 7 shots, which is just a massive output from a player. And you can get him at a really reduced price tag compared to everyone else. So I think that Kasperi Kapanen is the guy that you're going to look at when you're looking to save value on the slate.
Joe, who's somebody that people can look to save value?
Yeah, if you want to get in Tyler Seguin, you're definitely going to need some salary saving. I think Essa Lindell on that same team, actually on the second power play unit for Dallas, but 3.2 shots plus blocks per game at his low salary, in a game that we think is going to be extremely high pace. I just really like his ice time upside. He's at over 22 minutes in every game this year. I think he's a really great option to save salary.
All right, well done, guys. We're going to play some Tears of Joy with you in just a moment. But first, we are spinning and winning with our NFL panel after this PSA from Mr. Pat Mayo.
Quarterbacks. Let's talk about quarterbacks very briefly. Streaming for the week. Not a ton. Dalton's a good play at Pittsburgh against Pittsburgh. I think Jameis is a good play at Atlanta, and I think Baker's a good play at home against the Chargers. Baker looked good yesterday.
Jameis is my favorite of all of these.
I can see that. Then I have Carr and Alex Smith. I think they're behind the top 3 though.
Yeah, Smith, you could sort of make the case. I mean, listen, the Giants scored 31 points for the first time in years against that Panthers defense. They've got problems. And Smith, we'll see how he does tonight, but if he can show that he can sort of run that offense effectively against the Saints and bounce back, I don't see why he can't do the similar things against the Panthers. So I like Smith maybe a little more than you do.
We had a lot of streaming defense last week. Like, there was a lot of really good ones. Most of them actually paid off. Even Lions against the Packers. Playing any team with a good pass rush against the Packers is going to be a play. Like, it doesn't really matter that Aaron Rodgers is going to auto-post 20 points. Like, he's going to fumble. He's going to turn it over. And the Lions were one step away from scoring a major on defense, but they're the Lions, so of course they just...
and the sack fumble, I was watching that live, and I was screaming, because I own Rodgers in fantasy. I was screaming at him. It's like, look behind you. He's coming.
He didn't see it. Did not look behind him. No. Maybe he. Do you think that's why QBs wear visors? That they can see the reflection in the visor? Be like, oh, here's what's coming from behind me.
Now, don't give the NFL any ideas.
Sneaky. So Green Bay's number 1 in my defense stream rankings. They were dropped en masse because they played Detroit last week, and the fact they're a shitty defense, that doesn't help. But they're playing guilty beat-hard, so they'll be fine. Philly Thursday night at the Giants. That's again a good pass rush going up against a bad offensive line. Dallas and Jacksonville. I don't love Dallas's D. They do generate good pressure. Jacksonville actually has a pretty good offensive line. It did get banged up over the weekend, though. But stream against Bortles, either it really works out or it doesn't. I think it happens enough that you can take a chance on it. The other two are Indy at the Jets. Indy has a very good pass rush, top 5 in football right now. So if you can get pressure on Darnold, you can make mistakes.
Absolutely.
And Miami against Chicago. This is just, not that Miami's defense is any good. They should be healthier next week, but everyone's just so big on Trubisky right now because the last time we saw him, he was amazing. Let's get him back on the road. I don't think he's going to be the best.
Why can't I stream Chicago? Why didn't you mention them?
Shut up.
It is possible, however, that because they were on bye, somebody did drop the Bears.
Yeah, but I agree with you. I think I went and looked at it because I'd go and look at it. Like, no defense is like 100% owned, so I think they're like 91% owned. So it is possible. It's plausible that the Bears would be available in your league, but I mean, I'm not doing rankings for everyone specifically. Well, in my league, none of these guys are on. Well, in my league, all of these guys are like. Someone told me they could pick up Will Fuller. They're like, who do I pick up and start this week? I have some injury problems. Do I pick up Corey Davis, Marvin Jones, or Will Fuller? It's like, what the hell kind of league is this?
Well, there are a lot of 16 leagues out there.
Are there a lot of 16 leagues?
I can't imagine that there are, no.
All right, shockingly, Reed Fowler decided not to take another vacation, and he's back to talk some NFL with us. And he's joined by a couple guys who are all work, all the time, men committed to their craft. Alex McLean of DK Live and my man Ian Hartitz of the Action Network. Thanks for being here again.
Wow, you just couldn't let Reed sit there.
No, and he's got like a secret handshake with everyone in the office except for me.
Yeah, I know.
We'll talk about
really
that later.
awkward. We're here to put a fantasy spin on today's biggest NFL storylines, which is why we call this segment NFL Spin Move. Getting super creative here. All eyes were on Drew Brees, guys, his record-setting night. But as for the New Orleans run game, Alvin Kamara was basically given a breather with Mark Ingram taking the lead in his first game back from suspension. The team is on bye this week. But Reed, what would your approach be when it comes to playing either one of them in Week 7?
Yeah, Emerson also forgot, though I have a lot of inside jokes with Jessie as well, so let's not forget about that.
Yeah,
so
go ahead, Reed. Just answer the question.
But I wouldn't worry. I mean, like, look, he averaged 7 attempts last year, and he was a top fantasy running back. Look, this guy is such a threat in the pass game, and what you really like, too, with Kamara is that he hit double-digit fantasy points since Week 3 last year with all but one game, and that one game that he missed was because he got a concussion early on in that game against Atlanta. So when you look at what they can do, when you look at the other side of the ball with New Orleans, we kind of see this as the Saints of old, where they're giving up a ton of yards, 370 per game to opposing teams. They're 29th in total defense. So now you have to produce at a high level, and what are you going to do? You're going to feed both of your running backs. They were really close to obviously going to the Super Bowl and going to the big dance, and how you do that is with the tools that you have. This offense is just rich with a ton of talent, and sometimes you have an embarrassment of riches, but these two guys, I wouldn't worry about Kamara, not at all.
Ian, how are you going to approach playing those Saints running backs moving forward?
Oh, if you got them both, I mean, don't be afraid to play both because you got yourself 2 of the top 10 to 20 fantasy RBs in the league. I mean, Monday night just was the perfect storm of things that could go wrong for Kamara in terms of Sean Payton wanted to give him a breather after playing 80% snaps the first 4 weeks. The Redskins had really one of the worst run defenses in the league. So it just made sense to really pound Ingram more in the middle. And then, when the game's pretty much out of hand by halftime, there's obviously not much reason to get Kamara going as a receiver. So the only concern I really have is the goal line stuff, because we saw Ingram get those goal line carries, and Taysom Hill's apparently going to be an every week thing now that we got to look out for. But I think, as long as Kamara is not playing in complete blowouts every week, he's going to be having a lot of success receiving and, regular game pace situations. And even if it is going to be more blowouts from the Saints, I find it hard to believe Kamara is going to remain scoreless for too many more of them.
Alex, are you worried about Kamara's touches now that Ingram is back?
In DFS, I am, not in standard leagues. In standard leagues, both Ingram and Kamara are starters every week, just like they were last year. In DFS, I mean, obviously, salary plays a big role, but I expect both of their salaries are going to be too high. Kamara, he's one of the most exciting players in the league, but I'm always going to bet against, record-setting performances. And what he did finishing as a top 3 option with only 201 touches last year is almost unprecedented. That's way too few touches to be a top 3, top 5 RB. So I do expect him to fall back. I don't expect him to finish this year as a top 3 RB, but I still expect him to finish the year as an RB1. So in standard leagues, it doesn't change anything.
So, Reed, real quick, because Kenny Hippler's asking on Facebook, Alvin Kamara in trouble as the #1 running back option. That's a big no, right? I mean, you're playing this guy either way.
Yeah, you're not playing him during the bye week, so don't worry about this week. But yeah, like he's not in any trouble.
Okay.
Like Alex was saying, you might lose those, and Ian made a really good point too. You might lose those red zone touches, but we've seen this guy be efficient with very few attempts. Again, that efficiency is not going to be as high as it was, like Alex mentioned, but he's still one of the best players in the NFL, and talent always wins, so don't worry.
All right, well, if you didn't stay up late last night, you might have missed this. We had some post-game drama, Mama. Saints wide receiver Michael Thomas beefing with Redskins corner Josh Norman on Twitter after the game. Well into the early morning hours of Tuesday, Thomas calling Norman his son and a goofball con artist. BTW, Thomas was one of 3 Saints receivers with more than 70 yards in the game. So, Ian, was this just a blip here or a trend for this wide receiver core?
I love it from Michael Thomas, first of all, man.
Yeah, right?
Let all these corners know. I mean, he's playing like a top 5 receiver this year. No one can guard him. Just look at his Twitter handle. But I don't know about the rest of these guys on a week-to-week basis. Don't forget Ted Ginn Jr. was out last night. He's been pretty much ingrained into that #2 receiver spot. I think the Saints just like having a field stretcher. You know, if it's going to not Brandon Cooks anymore, obviously. So Ted Ginn is probably, I think, still going to be on the field in 2 wide receiver sets moving forward. But hey, man, I mean, Traquan Smith did all that on just 3 targets. Cam Meredith is looking healthier and healthier with 5. I don't trust Smith or Meredith in season long, like on a week-to-week basis, if Ginn's going to be healthy. But I mean, I think it just shows you if you're going to be approaching the Saints in GPPs and DFS, I mean, give a long look to these other receivers because these guys can make plays, just might not be as consistent as we saw last night.
Yeah, by the way, Traquan Smith, built by UCF, so keep that in mind. Reed, what do you think here? Because you know how much Drew Brees likes to spread the ball around.
Yeah. I mean, Ian hit the nail on the head. I mean, when you look at standard, it's really too much. He has too many options. So to have anyone like Traquan Smith, who was a preseason watch for a lot of us because of his talent out of UCF, that he was someone that was edging a little bit over Cam Meredith. Cam Meredith was another guy that we saw, hey, look, if he goes now into a place where they're going to throw the ball a ton, especially with Ingram out, he was someone that we were looking at. But Ian's right. When you have Ted Ginn out there, I think he's going to be the de facto #2. If he's out, I mean, we saw 67% of the snaps go to Traquan Smith, and he's a talent. We saw what he can do on 3 attempts or 3 catches. So I wouldn't mind playing these guys in DFS, but in terms of season long, I would stay away. Even Ben Watson, too, as well. I mean, they're hard to trust. It's Thomas and the running backs, and even Drew Brees to the extent because this defense can't stop anyone, he's still going to be throwing, so I'm not too worried about him either.
Alex, this is your opportunity to play devil's advocate. I know you love doing it.
All right, I will.
Excellent.
Last week, Michael Thomas went up against Janoris Jenkins, and he had his worst game of the season. Still a decent game, but, 4 for 40, sort of on the low end of what he's doing. And, this week he goes against Josh Norman, and he has a slightly tougher time. Weeks 4 and weeks 5 are the only 2 times that a wide receiver other than Thomas has seen more than 3 targets, I believe the number is. So, in the first couple of games, it was all the targets were going to Thomas and Kamara. Now we have Ingram back, and Traquan Smith is starting to show why people were excited about him in the preseason. And their schedule coming up after the bye has a bunch of tough defenses going on. Ravens, then the Vikings, then the Rams. This could be a rough patch of the schedule for Michael Thomas. Don't get me wrong, he's still an easy wide receiver 1 the rest of the season, but he's someone I'm going to be fading in DFS for a couple of weeks. And it's definitely, we are entering a period where Traquan Smith will have an opportunity to really establish himself as a legitimate wide receiver option while defenses are focusing their attention on Thomas.
Well, guys, as if losing the game wasn't bad enough, a blow to the Washington backfield with Adrian Peterson dislocating his shoulder. The NFL Network reporting that it's just a strain and Peterson will get a second opinion, but it's not expected to keep him from playing. He's obviously not going to be 100% though, so how does this affect your approach to playing any of those Washington running backs, Alex?
It doesn't make a huge impact because I didn't trust AP in the first place. I was Chris Thompson or bust in this backfield, so I wasn't going to play AP anyways. The idea that you can have just a strain on the muscle that holds the ball to your body when you're a running back, I mean, that's significant. Shoulder problems are tough for running backs, who have to hold on to the ball. But I didn't trust AP before, so I'm not going to trust him going forward. I'm Chris Thompson based on the matchup, or I'm out on the Redskins backfield.
Yeah, so AP only had 6 touches in that game anyway. Obviously moving forward with this injury. Reed, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Alex here. When you look at that offense as a whole, it's really an indictment on Jay Gruden. AP is someone that we see a lot of early success, but when times get tough, and now he's an older back, we have some of these injuries. And while he's one of the most, if you look at his workout regimen, he's a guy that works out like no other. He's still going to have issues because of how this offense runs. Look, Alex Smith had the second highest yards per reception last year, and Paul Richardson, you bring him in to stretch the field, who had the 8th highest per reception, but yet they never really throw the ball, and this guy checks down, and he gets a guy like Chris Thompson, who's one of the best, if not the best in the backfield, because guys went down, to get injured. So this is really an indictment on this pass offense, the defense too as well. Like you get worried, especially in that division, with who's really going to reign over this division, especially in this running back in this backfield. I wouldn't trust anyone if it's not Chris Thompson. So I would pass on these guys.
Yeah, Ian, we've seen Alex Smith struggling to get any of these playmakers the ball anyway. Now with AP banged up, are you just staying away from the Washington running backs?
So not only is AP banged up, but Chris Thompson actually left the game with a rib injury as well. So, I mean, I don't think either of these are injuries that are necessarily going to sideline these guys. But, I mean, kind of like Alex was saying, like, less so holding on the ball. But, I mean, shoulder injury for AP trying to run between the tackles isn't great. And then a rib injury for a running back is obviously pretty painful for them to deal with. So I think more than anything, we're just going to see these backups, Samaje Perine and Capri Bibbs, maybe form a little bit more of a, 40-40, 10-10 committee instead of the 50-50 we've seen from AP and Chris Thompson so far. So might be a situation to avoid for next week or two.
Alrighty, and down in Duval, the Jaguars have signed Jamal Charles, thinking it's 2013. Jacksonville just lost Corey Grant for the season, but what does the addition of Charles mean for the owners of, let's say, Fournette and Yeldon, 2 other guys who are banged up? Reed?
I hope you don't have Yeldon and Fournette. No, it's they do this because of that injury to Grant. Yep. I think you need a change of pace guy. And look, the same thing with Fournette. Like he is built like glass. He's one of the biggest and strongest running backs, but he always gets hurt. So you need really to roster 3 running backs because of Fournette. So this is a cascading event. I don't imagine him being that much of a threat. Yeah, he could potentially give you a GPP option in some spots, in some game theory spots. He averaged about a little over 4.2 yards in Denver, but he's not the same Jamal Charles of old. Like he is a guy that can potentially get you a big game, but this is really so Yeldon doesn't have to play 100% of the snaps. He's not a guy that they trust as a workhorse back. He never has been. So they need someone to fill. And Jamal Charles, when you look at the landscape of available running backs, I guess he's the best. So I wouldn't worry too much once Fournette comes back. This is not going to affect him long term.
Ian, no Corey Grant. We know Fournette's not going to play this weekend. Could be out for a couple weeks, reportedly, by multiple outlets here. Is it worth taking a shot on Jamal Charles?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, we saw when Fournette's in, he's the clear-cut guy. And when Fournette's been out, Yeldon's been the clear-cut guy. I mean, I thought this year, after they tendered Grant and, we saw him do some good things against the Patriots in the playoffs, I thought it might be more of a Yeldon Grant 1-2 committee without Fournette, but they really just keep feeding Yeldon the ball. So if they're not even going to do a 2-back committee with the guy that they've had in the roster for the last few years, I just don't see any chance that Jamal Charles gets a meaningful role. I mean, he'll play a few snaps, so Yeldon's not out there the whole game. But if anything, I think this is good news for Yeldon because I don't see Charles having even as large of a role as Grant did.
Alex, he's a 4-time Pro Bowler, has a career average of 5.4 yards per carry. How much fantasy value does this guy still have?
None. This guy couldn't get above Devontae Booker on the depth chart last year, and now he's been unemployed until week 5. He's totally irrelevant. He had 1 game above 7 points, 7 DraftKings points last season. He's totally irrelevant. TJ Yeldon is the obvious fill-in, and this is meaningless.
All right, sounds good. I'm glad we were able to squeeze in that question into today's show.
Definitely. Sounds good for the Jags, buddy.
Yeah.
Feeling good for you.
Meaningless in Jags.
Me,
That's what I really is the point.
Very confident, man. All right, thanks, guys. So we have some MLB Showdown picks coming up and some NHL Tears of Joy to play right after this Fantasy Flash.
Tyler Sullivan here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Jay Ajayi's 2018 season has come to a close. The Eagles running back has torn his ACL and will be out for the rest of the season. Jay Ajayi was the leading man in Philly's backfield this season, and now it opens the door for another back to solidify himself in the role and ascend to DFS relevance. It's possible that the Eagles could go outside the organization to help their running game, but they do have some in-house options. The obvious choice is Corey Clement, who will likely see the bulk of the work in the Eagles' Thursday Night Football matchup with the Giants this week. Clement has a standard price tag of $4,400 in this showdown contest this week and has a 4.1 yards per carry so far this season, but he is dealing with a quad injury. But if he's healthy, he will have the lion's share of touches in Week 6. The other back to keep an eye on is Wendell Smallwood, especially if Clement is going to be limited due to that injury. Smallwood played a little bit more of a factor in the passing game as he's caught 10 passes for 96 yards and a touchdown this season, but also owns a strong 6 yards per carry average when given the chance to run the football.
All right, time to put the show on ice once again. Our Action Network friends, Sean Newsham and Joe Holka, are here, and NHL Tears of Joy is the name of the game.
Guys, we have 4 players in Tier 1. Who are you going to take, Joe?
Yeah, I think the obvious pick here is probably Tyler Seguin, but I'm going to go with Nathan McKinnon. I think there's just a lot of leverage to be gained in tournaments with going with McKinnon. He's got our #1 shot prediction in our models over at Fantasy Labs today. I think on the other guys in that Tier 1, Tavares probably going to draw the top line for Dallas. Matthews, obviously a ton of upside, but then it just becomes more of an ownership thing for me. And obviously, I think McKinnon's going to be the lowest owned with a pretty similar expectation to some of these other guys.
Sean, what do you think? You worried about high ownership on some of these guys, and who are you going to take in Tier 1?
No, as Joe will probably tell you, I like to eat a lot of chalk. So for me, Tyler Seguin and his high ownership doesn't really worry me at all. I think that Seguin is the best player in the slate, and even though he'll be at a high ownership, I think that that's a fine situation to block people off at. So for me, Tyler Seguin had 2 goals, 2 assists, 8 shots on goal against a Winnipeg team that I think is one of the best teams in the league. So if he can do that against them, what is he going to be able to do against a Toronto team that has decided not to play defense this season?
Yeah, well, he's really living up to that contract, Seguin is.
Yes, he indeed is. Sean, you're going to be eating some chalk in Tier 2. You got 4 players to choose from.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go right back and eat some more chalk. So for me, a lot of the NHL and the tiers correlation is very important. So if you can correlate 2 top guys like Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn, and they go off for a given night, you're in a really good situation. Whereas if you have a guy in Tier 1 like Tyler Seguin and he doesn't produce, you're going to struggle anyways. Against Winnipeg, the game I just talked about, Benn and Seguin combined for 7 score points and had 25.5 points on DraftKings. If you can combine those 2 and they can go off for a similar type of game tonight, it'll propel you in a situation where it's very difficult to lose and put you in a position where you're ahead of everyone else in those 2 tiers.
Joe, are you going in the same direction as Sean?
Yeah, I totally agree with him as far as the Seguin to Benn stack. I think that's a great way to kind of start your lineups in tiers tonight. But if you're not going to do that, you better hit some upside. And a good way to do that is with Erik Karlsson, 8 peripheral stats 2 nights ago. He's just had insane time on ice numbers over the course of the start of this year, 28.2 minutes per game. That's almost 3 minutes per game more than Burns. So I think Erik Karlsson, if you're not going to go with that star stack, is a good way to capture some upside.
All right, guys, and a must play from the last 4 tiers. Take your pick, Joe.
Yeah, so in the last 4 tiers, I mentioned Karlsson, but I think Brent Burns is just an absolute steal in Tier 4. I don't think we've really seen him that low in the tiers for quite some time. Still carries one of the best floors in all of DFS hockey. And if we're going to talk about correlation, you can go with Burns and Karlsson. I don't see any reason why you can't have both.
Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Brent Burns is a great pick. I'm going to actually stick to the same team and go all the way to the 8th tier and pick Timo Meier. He's a guy that shot production is always very solid. The issue with him has been his minutes. However, thus far this year, he's seen about 16.5, 17 minutes per game. And over the course of the season, if he maintains that, and today especially, I expect to see him put out a shot total that warrants him being the best play in tier 8.
Yeah, he's been skating on that top line.
Yes, he has. Before we say peace out, give us a slate-approved pick, your must-play tonight. Go ahead, Sean.
For me, it's someone I talked about earlier. I'm going to go right back to Toronto in that top line with Mitch Marner. For me, Mitch Marner is just in a situation this year where he's going to produce and he is going to put up numbers that we have not seen from him this year. So you look at him all the way down in tier 6. I think that you could see 2 goals possibly from him tonight and a great stat line.
All right, Joe, we have less than 20 minutes until these contests go live, so hit the people at home with your slate-approved pick, who they have to have in their lineup.
All right, tier 7, Shane Gostisbehere. Just a guy 95th percentile in shot attempts over the past year. Just a really nice floor. A lot of people are probably going to gravitate towards Pavelski in that same tier. I just think that Ghost has a lot more reliable floor in that same game.
All the way down in the tiers. All right. Thanks, team. We're taking one more trip to the NFL right after Pat Mayo dishes on this week's CIMB Classic way over yonder in Malaysia. What?
Entire $9,000 range. You got Bradley, Leishman, Woodland, Griot, Rafa Cabrera-Bello, and Snedeker. I can see myself starting, I think my single favorite play in the field is Brandt Snedeker. Like it's really weird. Like he played really well last week, but is getting no credit whatsoever. It's Bermuda greens, which is really nice instead of the Paslin. He putts well on Poa, he putts well on Bermuda. We saw him at the Wyndham. This is a course that I think that correlates really well with this. He's won East Lake in the past. His game is rolling a little bit right now. It wasn't the best with the irons over the weekend, but he still ended up in a playoff, did end up losing. He just had a bad final day. It happens from time to time, but you're getting a pretty decent discount for a very quality player. And the other one would just be Gary Woodland, who is playing really well through the playoffs, has played well at this course in the past. And I'm just thinking iron players. So Snedeker, Woodland, Keegan, like those 3 guys really stand out to me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Woodland. He's one of those guys. He's a bomber for sure, but he benefits from a shorter course. He can limit his spraying. And that's really what gets him into trouble. He's been good lately. Yeah, Sneds, if you take it at a macro level, that was a success last week for sure. It just ended really badly. Should have found the winner's circle. I get Keegan, like I said. I think for me, that's a guy, if he's going to be popular. And I think just on the whole, you had mentioned, we don't have strokes gain data. That's going to funnel people to look at what we do have, which is course history. And I think it's going to inflate all those guys a little more than it would on a typical week.
So do you have, are you going to put Rafa Cabrera-Bello in your player pool as well? Because I'm thinking that, the most success that I've had, strangely, in DraftKings Golf, and it's obviously not something that's going to work every single week, but when you have the outlier weeks, when you can cash really large, is of just avoiding the very top guys. Like, I might just go full fade on everyone above $9,000. And that will be the way that I differentiate my teams. And it feels like one of those weeks where you're going to cash really, really well or cash 0 lineups.
Yeah, if you do that, it's just a fact. Can you get away with the win equity that you're sacrificing now?
But how much win equity am I really sacrificing? Because there's going to be a draw to go up to, Justin Thomas is one thing, but he's 11-7. But if I look at Billy Horschel at 10-7, realistically, I know what his odds are. His actual betting odds are 14-1. But does he really have 2 times the win equity of Brandt Snedeker?
No. And so for me, you're right. I think we're kind of saying the same thing in the sense it's Justin Thomas, and then there's a big gap, and then there's everyone. So I don't mind taking a kind of dead range in the 10s and maybe bumping down to the 9s, and then you can build pretty freely if you do that. I make enough teams where, and even in this, I'm not playing crazy amounts, but I don't want to full fade Justin Thomas. I think it's a little scary, but if you had a finite amount of bullets and you say, you know what, I'm going to roll the dice, bet JT to come, if he comes 5th or worse, say it's going to be a big positive for me. And then I can build freely. I don't hate that. You could start with Sneds, start with Woodland.
Welcome back to The Sweat, everybody, where we ask our football panel the hard questions so you do not have to @ them on Twitter. Feel free to, though, when they are wrong. Speaking of, here they are, DK Live's Reed Fowler and Alex Reclean, plus the Action Network's Ian Harditz. Hello again for the final time this afternoon.
Guys, let's look into the proverbial crystal ball and make predictions on players with high expectations for Week 6.
We give you a player and their fantasy point projection, and you tell us if you think they're going over or under it. It is very simple. Even Reed Fowler can do it.
All right, listen carefully, Reed, because you're going to go first. So I think we can all agree it's been a a confusing year for Tom Brady fans. First he was good, then he was awful, then he was good again.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
So he's got a good chance to continue the good on Sunday when he faces a Chiefs defense that's given up an average of 461 yards per game this season. Over under 30 fantasy points for Brady this week, Reed.
Like 30 is a lot, so I'm going to say I'm a little over here. I think I'm going to be optimistic about. I know we always like, and Alex is probably rolling his eyes right now because that's a ton, right? You don't want to say that, but I like this. In terms of this, like you guys said it too, Kansas City's defense against opposing quarterbacks averages about 26 DK fantasy points. And now when you look at Brady, of 2015 to 2017 seasons, he's hit the 30 or above mark 10 times. And of those 10 times, 5 of them have come in the month of October. So we've come to see that this September timeframe, especially for New England, is sort of their preseason, or let's see what's working, let's see what's not working in terms of personnel, play calling, so on and so forth. And now we've seen in the month of October, these guys really hit their stride. They have a run game finally. They have a guy who can stretch the field, like a Brandon Cooks and Josh Gordon. So I do, in this game where it has a 59 implied game total and them having a huge implied team total, I do think he goes over, and I'm excited to hear Alex say absolutely not.
Yeah, Alex, rolling your eyes, so please go ahead.
How rude.
I'm not rolling my eyes, but yeah, I mean, I'm just not going to assume that a player gets 300 yards and 4 TDs, even if it's a defense that allowed Blake Bortles who is not a good quarterback, to perform as well as he did last week, where what did he get, 28 DK points? Despite 4 interceptions. Like, this is a bad defense, but you just can't ever assume that a player gets 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Like, I can't do it.
You can't do it, Ian, but, you know, Brady, he did connect with 8 different pass catchers last week. He's doing pretty well. What do we think? Over, under?
Hey, take it easy on that Blake Bortles slander.
The
okay?
vote! That's what
I thought
I'm
the guy
saying.
was playing pretty well before
You
last
laughed
week.
at me last week when I said I liked him better than Mahomes. You laughed at me.
Stop
300 passing yards and a rushing touchdown, and a blowout win was that bad? Come on, man. All right, looking at Brady, give me the over here, all right? Why did he look so good last week? Julian Edelman's back. Josh Gordon's getting more involved. Rob Gronkowski couldn't go 5 yards down the field the first 3 weeks of the season without 2 guys on his hip. Now they finally have some weapons across the formation that can win with these one-on-one matchups. So that's a lot. It's obviously a lot of fantasy points, but guess what? Brady's one of 3 quarterbacks to actually rack up 7 games up 30-plus DraftKings points over the last 2.5 seasons. So if you're going to predict that a quarterback is going to go over 30 fantasy points, I'd say it should be Brady in this matchup.
JB 12.
He's looking pretty good and very young for his age.
Yeah.
Well, Deshaun Watson's been pretty great over the last few weeks. Actually, in fact, since week 1, he's been darn good. But so has the Bills' defense, I guess. Do you like Watson to go over or under 24 fantasy points this week, Ian? He had 25 his last game out.
I'm going under here. Look, I mean, Deshaun Watson's banged up right now. He's day-to-day with his chest injury. I mean, I think we all saw him just get hit over and over again on Sunday Night Football. And, you know, I think he'll be out there, but it could affect some of his rushing attempts, you know, if they're going to keep running these quarterback sweeps on the goal line without giving Alfred Blue or Lamar Miller a chance. So I'm taking the under with that. And also something to keep an eye on is the status of Will Fuller, because he was out there a lot Sunday night, but only had 2 or 3 targets. So I'm not sure if he's 100% healthy. And, you know, we've seen Watson have some pretty major splits in terms of yards per attempt with and without Fuller on the field. So I know he's out there, but if he's not really demanding the same level of attention from defense, that really could affect the rest of the Texans offense.
Yeah, but then he's got, doesn't he have the rookie wide receiver, Kuti, right?
Kiki
Kuti, who fills in for Fuller. He's just fine. He's just fine. Over under 25 fantasy points here this week, Reed, for Mr. Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I'm going to say under as well, even if he plays, right, day to day. And he says that it should be okay. But if you look at other outlets like, you know, the Vegas, they have stopped taking bets on this game. So, like, that's something to be said, right? That if they don't know and if something, whatever, you just don't know, right? So if that's the case, I'm going to be less optimistic than I was with Brady and say under here and be pessimistic, because Ian is right. I mean, this guy got beat up Sunday night, and what is giving him this opportunity, right, is obviously the addition of Will Fuller out there stretching the field, but also they don't have a run game. He's averaging 6 attempts per game, and he's getting absolutely annihilated. So I'm going to say the under here because if they want to keep this guy on his 2 feet, they have to stop him from running unless it's absolutely out of necessity that this guy they have to get a run game established. And so I'm going to say under here, especially if Will Fuller is out, like you mentioned.
Alex, where are you going on this? Because the Texans, man, they are the hottest team in the National Football League right now. 2 wins in a row.
Wow.
Yeah, I am going to take the under, but I don't feel good about it. The Fuller injury has me a little nervous. Lamar Miller injury has me a little nervous. Even though, we might not be that high on Lamar Miller, the team decided that he was their best option, and he's not, or he's somewhat unlikely to play. So I don't feel good about it. The biggest problem I have with Watson is he has flashes of greatness and flashes of not so greatness, and it's within the same game. And so the Bills are a defense where they might be able to take advantage of some of those bad, poor decision plays. But at the same time, Watson has those great moments, and it only takes 1 or 2 rushing touchdowns to hit 25 easily.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, guys. Isaiah Crowell put up huge numbers in Week 5 against Denver, exploding for 33 DK fantasy points. This week, he takes on the Colts. Alex, is he going over or under 18 points this week?
I'll take the over, but only if I can change it to Bilal Powell. The Colts have allowed Mixon, James White, Wendell Smallwood, and Chris Thompson all to get 18 DK fantasy points, but all of those guys were catching passes. For Isaiah Crowell to get it, he needs 100 yards and a TD, and because he doesn't really catch passes, and that's too much for me to expect. But seeing what the Colts have given up to these other dual threat running backs, I'll take the over for Bilal, but not for Crowell.
Reed, 18 DK fantasy points. What do you think, over or under?
Yeah, Alex hit the nail on the head here. I absolutely agree 100% that it's a Bilal Powell game. And really defense, the running defense in Denver is something to really focus on. Do we attack that in terms of game theory moving forward? Because 219 yards on 15 attempts is wildly efficient for a guy who's wildly inefficient. He's 40% of the snaps. He hasn't averaged even close to 15 attempts. He's averaged around 10 or 11. So now when you look at that and you look at the game coming up, you look at Indy, who gives up the 3rd most targets to opposing running backs. So all of this is setting up for Bilal Powell as opposed to Crowell, who, to me, really saw a game theory put in his position to where getting 290, it was like a college football game where these guys just racked up the yards, extremely efficient, and that's not going to happen every week. Like Alex said, he's got to be 100-plus yards and a touchdown. It's not going to happen, so under.
Ian, nobody wants to take the over. Are you going to jump in and do it?
Do it.
Nah, I'm not that guy. I'm going under here. Crowell is actually my favorite. If you got him on your fantasy team, it can trade him to an owner that maybe doesn't realize how much of a committee system this is. Do it, because right now this year, Bilal Powell is averaging, it's almost 50-50, but Bilal Powell is actually averaging more carries, more snaps, more targets per game. So he's definitely the play over Crowell. And this Colts defense is, they're not great, but they have had a better rush defense than secondary over the past 2 years. So I think the Jets offense in general, we're going to see these better weeks, but they're still, have the youngest quarterback in the league as a rookie under center. So I think we'll have a less optimistic view about this backfield, I think, after this week.
Yeah, not a single one of you believes in Isaiah Crowell. That's
Yeah,
what I took from that question.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're out of time, at least to talk football, so I appreciate all of you being here today. We really do. No break. Straight to the majors we go. And look who we have waiting for us. It's 2 of our favorite baseball bros, Steve Buchanan of DraftKings, Action Matt LaMarca of the Action Network, which you can find where, Matt? Go ahead, where?
iPhones and Androids.
On the iPhone store.
Jesus, he doesn't even know where he works.
That's pathetic.
I thought we were going to have a little break.
Do you black out, Matt? Because we say it every day. We're like, available on iPhones and Androids.
Sorry.
We'll clip that off for you. Don't worry. All right.
What just happened? All right.
Don't
anywho.
embarrass him.
I'm sorry.
Move
I'm sorry.
on.
He just did it in front of billions of people.
Move on.
Yeah,
Billions.
DK Live's a good app.
Billions. That's true,
It is.
Steve. All right.
I support that app.
Guys.
You can find that on the iTunes and Android store.
Oh, the iTunes.
Hey, there he is.
The iTunes store. All right, guys, the reason we do have you here is not to talk about iPhones and Androids. It's to gather your MLB Showdown picks for tonight's game. Game 4 of the ALDS between the Yankees and the Red Sox. So Rick Porcello and CZ Sabathia are your starters. Are you going to take either one, Steve?
First and foremost, I want to say your hair looks very nice. I appreciate you getting all done up for my appearance.
Thank you. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of product in it.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
So I'm not interested in Sabathia at all. I mean, any early troubles, the bullpen is going to be firing away at all cylinders. This is obviously a must-win game for the Yankees, so they can't afford to have any blunders here. So I am interested in taking in Porcello here. I mean, he's averaging 17.2 DK fantasy points against the Yankees, but that includes 2 outings, one of them in the bullpen, which he came in during the earlier this series, and then a 2-inning start to end the season. So if you take those ones out, he's actually averaging 24.1 DK fantasy points in 3 starts against them this season. He's been much better on the road than he has been at Fenway Park, and his price, $14,000, really isn't outrageous, and you can easily balance your lineup out with a reliever in your lineup. So I think Porcello's a good guy here in this matchup, throws strikes, and I think he's a good spot for him.
Paying up the extra $700 over Sabathia. He's 13-3. Matt, are you interested in either one of these guys?
Yeah, you definitely can't touch Sabathia. I agree with Steve there. I think even if he's pitching great, they have the potential to pull him after 3 innings or so. Like, if I'm Aaron Boone, I'm going down with my bullpen tonight 100%. So I think Porcello for sure is the better option of the two, and I agree that he's a pretty good option tonight. If you look at his numbers, he actually has a better FIP and a career-high K per 9 this season. Both of those marks stronger than when he won the Cy Young Award back in 2016. But most importantly, the Red Sox just need him tonight. You know, they don't have nearly the same options in the bullpen as the Yankees do. So I think in a perfect world, they would try to get 7 innings out of him, just like they did with Eovaldi last night. Maybe have him get the ball directly to Kimbrel. And as good as the Yankees lineup is, they're not nearly as potent against right-handed pitchers. So I will be putting Porcello in basically all of my lineups today.
Matt, you feel better about taking Aaron Judge's bat or Giancarlo Stanton's tonight?
Yeah, this one for me is Judge by a pretty big landslide. I was worried about the wrist injury, but it really hasn't affected him in the postseason. And if you look at what he's done against right-handed pitchers this season at home, it's pretty insane. 521 WOBA, 380 ISO, 227 WRC+. I think he's got the highest ceiling of any batter on today's slate.
Stanton or Judge, Steven?
Yeah, I won't waste a lot of time here. I mean, Matt nailed it. I mean, Judge at home against righties is just absolutely insane. And interesting, as I was going through the numbers here, Stanton has his worst offensive output numbers with runners in scoring position this season. 291 WOBA with a 138 isolated power and a K percentage of 30%. Mr. Clutch, he is not. Judge is the option here.
All right, how about on the other side, Mookie Betts or JD Martinez, Steve?
Yeah, you know, I mean, they're just so similar. I feel like you can't go wrong in either mashup here. I mean, Martinez does have the worst power numbers on the road against lefties, a 149 isolated power, and that's what he's going to be facing here. I mean, but really, you're just splitting hairs at this point saying, you know, points like that. I mean, at this point, you'd expect both of them, you know, they don't have the home run power as they do against righties, as they do lefties here. You do get a $1,000 discount for Betts here, so I feel like I'm just probably going to go him, Betts in this matchup, but truly, can't go wrong in either spot here.
Yeah, what do you think, Matt? Either one of these guys? I mean, which one would you want to either pay up for or save maybe $1,000 on?
I'm gonna side with JD Martinez here. If I knew that these guys were getting multiple at-bats against Sabathia, I would take Betts because Betts has been the superior option against lefties. He might be the best hitter in baseball against left-handed pitchers. But I expect them to see a lot of righties, and I like the ability of JD Martinez to go the other way. 81 of his career home runs out of 195 have gone either to right or right center. So I think he's primed to take advantage of the short porch out there at Yankee Stadium.
All right, guys, slate approved time. Who is your lock for this showdown, Matt?
I'm going with Dellin Betances. I'm expecting a lot of work for the Yankees relievers, and I think he's my favorite. He's gone 2 innings in each of his past 2 outings, and he's posted a K per 9 of 15.5 this season. That's a ton of upside at 2,800. If he can go multi-innings, get a hold and a bunch of strikeouts, that's great value.
Steve, who's your lock?
Yeah, Aaron Hicks batting leadoff tonight. You're not going to get a leadoff hitter with the power and the salary that he is tonight, 7,800. But what it's worth, when he's been batting leadoff this season, 402 WOBA, 309 isolated power with 11 of his 27 home runs. The Yankees are going to lose. Hicks is a good play, though.
All right. Well, Matt, don't worry. This show is not live. You have absolutely nothing to worry about. Okay?
He's
I'm worried.
It is.
Great job
It's
by
live.
everyone today, though, including you two baseball guys. We love you. We love this show.
Yeah, this is The Sweat. I'm Jessie. He's Emerson. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6 p.m.